The champagne tasted like victory, but it was about to turn bitter as hell. I stood in my downtown office, watching the city lights flicker through floor-to-ceiling windows, holding a glass that cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. After 15 years of grinding, clawing, and eating humble pie, I'd finally closed the deal that would change everything. $40 million. The biggest contract in our company's history. My name is Jake Morrison, and until 3 hours ago, I thought I was living the American dream. Jake, you magnificent bastard. My boss, Richard Garrison, burst through the office door with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for lottery winners and new fathers. The board is ecstatic. We're talking about a corner office, profit sharing, maybe even a partnership track. I should have been over the moon, should have been calling my wife Lisa to share the news, should have been planning how to spend my bonus. Instead, I felt this nagging weight in my chest, like a storm cloud that wouldn't move. Thanks, Rick. It feels surreal. Surreal? Kid, you just saved this company's ass and secured your family's future. Lisa must be thrilled. That's when the weight got heavier. Lisa had been distant lately, cold. Our conversations had devolved into logistics about bills, schedules, and whose turn it was to take out the trash. When I'd tried to tell her about the deal this morning, she'd barely looked up from her phone. She's processing it, I said. Rick raised an eyebrow but didn't push. He'd been married 30 years. He knew the look of a man whose home life was complicated. Well, we're throwing you a celebration dinner Friday night. The whole team, plus spouses. Fancy place downtown. Don't let me down by showing up alone. After he left, I sat in the leather chair that had witnessed countless late nights and stress-induced headaches. The city sprawled below me like a circuit board, all connected lights and flowing traffic. I pulled out my phone and called Lisa. Hey, it's me. The deal went through. 40 million. Silence. Then, that's nice, Jake. Listen, I'm at dinner with my sister. Can we talk later? Her sister, Rachel Peterson. If there was a human embodiment of entitlement and condescension, it would be my sister-in-law. Rachel had married into money. Her husband, David, owned 3 car dealerships, and she never let anyone forget it. She treated me like I was some charity case Lisa had picked up out of pity. Sure, just thought you'd want to know that our financial worries are basically over. I'll see you at home. She hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at the phone for a long moment, then poured myself another glass of champagne. It still tasted like victory, but now there was something else underneath. Something that tasted like the beginning of the end. The drive home to Mercury Lane took me through the heart of our middle-class neighborhood. Modest houses with small yards, American flags on porches, kids' bikes scattered on driveways. It was the kind of place where people knew their neighbors and borrowed cups of sugar. Lisa had always complained it wasn't upscale enough, especially after visiting Rachel's mansion in the suburbs. Our house sat at the end of the street, a 2-story colonial with blue shutters that Lisa had insisted on painting last year. I'd spent 3 weekends on a ladder, sweating through the summer heat, while she supervised from the shade with a glass of iced tea. I pulled into the driveway and noticed Rachel's BMW parked on the street. Of course she was still here, probably filling Lisa's head with more poison about how she deserved better. The front door was unlocked, and I could hear voices from the kitchen. Female voices, with that particular tone women use when they're discussing men they find disappointing. Never going to be more than middle management, Rachel was saying. David was making 6 figures by the time he was 30. I know, but Jake works hard. This deal could change things. Could. Might maybe. Lisa, you're 38 years old. How much longer are you going to wait for him to become the man you deserve? I stood in the hallway, briefcase in one hand, bottle of celebration champagne in the other, listening to my wife and sister-in-law dissect my inadequacies like I was a failed science experiment. He's a good man, Lisa said, but her voice lacked conviction. Good doesn't pay for vacations in Europe. Good doesn't get you into the country club. Good doesn't make other women jealous of what you have. I cleared my throat loudly and walked into the kitchen. Rachel was perched on one of our bar stools like a predatory bird, her perfectly manicured nails wrapped around a wine glass. Lisa stood by the counter, looking guilty. "Ladies," I said, setting down the champagne with more force than necessary. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Rachel's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Jake, we were just talking about you. Lisa was telling me about your little work thing." "My little work thing?" I looked at Lisa, who suddenly found the floor fascinating. "I closed a $40 million deal today, the biggest in company history." "Well, congratulations," Rachel said, her tone suggesting I'd just announced I'd learned to tie my shoes. "David closed a $12 million acquisition last month. Of course, that was just one of several deals he had going." The comparison hung in the air like a fart in an elevator. Lisa still wouldn't meet my eyes. "I should probably head home," Rachel continued, sliding off the stool with practiced grace. "David's taking me to that new steakhouse downtown, the one with the 6-month waiting list." She paused, letting that sink in. "Unless you know someone, of course." She kissed Lisa on the cheek and gave me a patronizing pat on the shoulder. "Enjoy your champagne, Jake. You've earned it." After she left, the kitchen felt smaller somehow. Lisa busied herself wiping down counters that were already clean. "So," I said, $40 million. Think that might be worth a conversation?" She sighed, the kind of long-suffering sigh usually reserved for dealing with difficult children. "It's great, Jake. Really, I'm proud of you." "You don't sound proud." "You sound like I just told you I got Employee of the Month at McDonald's. That's not fair. Isn't it? Your sister just spent 20 minutes explaining why I'm not good enough for you, and you sat there nodding along." Lisa finally looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that made my stomach drop. It wasn't anger or frustration. It was disappointment. The kind of deep, bone-weary disappointment that comes from years of hoping things would be different. "Maybe she has a point," Lisa said quietly. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd been expecting an argument, even a fight. I hadn't been expecting surrender. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm tired, Jake. Tired of living paycheck to paycheck. Tired of making excuses for why we can't afford the things our friends have. Tired of pretending I'm happy with this. She gestured around our kitchen, our home, our life. This one deal changes everything. The bonus alone will be enough to... One deal, one lucky break after 15 years of nothing. She shook her head. Rachel's right. David was already successful when she married him. She never had to wait and hope and make do. So what are you saying? Lisa wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking smaller and older. I don't know, I need some time to think. She walked past me toward the stairs, pausing at the doorway. There's leftover pizza in the fridge. I'm going to bed. I stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of what had started as the best day of my professional life. The champagne bottle sat unopened on the counter, mocking me. Outside, I could hear the Hendersons' dog barking and the distant sound of traffic on the main road. I opened the champagne anyway, because sometimes you need to toast your victories even when they taste like defeats, especially then. The next morning, Lisa was gone before I woke up. No note, no text, just the lingering scent of her perfume and an empty coffee pot. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, still in my suit from the day before, with an empty champagne bottle on the coffee table as my only companion. My phone buzzed with a text from Rick. Board meeting at 9. They want to discuss your promotion. Bring your A game. I showered, shaved, and put on my best tie. The navy blue one Lisa had bought me for Christmas 2 years ago. Looking in the mirror, I tried to see what she saw, what Rachel saw. A 43-year-old man with thinning hair and crow's feet, wearing a suit from Men's Warehouse instead of some Italian designer. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was exactly what I looked like. Ordinary. But ordinary men don't close $40 million deals. The board meeting was everything I'd dreamed of. Handshakes, congratulations, talk of corner offices and profit-sharing agreements. They wanted to fast-track my promotion to senior vice president with a salary that would double our household income. I should have been walking on air. Instead, I kept thinking about the look in Lisa's eyes. That disappointed resignation, like she'd finally given up on a dream she'd been carrying for too long. I called her during my lunch break. "Jake, I'm at work. Can this wait?" The board offered me SVP, 140,000 base, plus bonuses. "We're talking about $250,000 a year, Lisa." Silence. Then, "That's wonderful." "Really? You don't sound like it's wonderful." "I'm just processing. This is all very sudden." "Sudden? I've been working toward this for 15 years. "I know. I have to go. We'll talk tonight, okay?" But we didn't talk that night. Lisa came home late, claiming she'd gone out with friends from work. She went straight to bed, and I spent another evening on the couch, watching late-night television and wondering when my marriage had become a polite arrangement between strangers. The pattern continued for weeks. I threw myself into work, preparing for my new role, while Lisa grew more distant. She started going out more, dinners with Rachel, girls' nights that stretched past midnight, weekend shopping trips that didn't result in any new purchases. Our friends began to notice. Tom and Jennifer Walsh, who lived 3 houses down, had been our couple friends for 8 years. We'd done barbecues, game nights, double dates to movies and restaurants. But lately, Lisa had been declining their invitations. "Everything okay with you two?" Tom asked one Saturday morning as we both retrieved our newspapers from the driveway. "Jen says Lisa seems different lately." "Just work stress," I said, which was becoming my standard response to anyone who asked. Tom nodded, but I could see the concern in his eyes. In a neighborhood like ours, everyone knew everyone's business. If Tom was asking, it meant other people were talking. The breaking point came on a Friday night in October. Rick's celebration dinner was finally happening. He'd been planning it for weeks, wanting to make sure all the major clients could attend. It was being held at Meridian, the kind of upscale restaurant where the waiters wore bow ties and the wine list had more pages than most novels. I'd bought Lisa a new dress for the occasion, a black cocktail dress that cost more than our monthly electric bill. She'd tried it on without enthusiasm, standing in front of our bedroom mirror like she was preparing for a funeral instead of a celebration. "You look beautiful," I said, meaning it. "Thank you." Her smile was polite, distant, the kind of smile you'd give a stranger who complimented your outfit in an elevator. The restaurant was everything Rick had promised. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, servers who appeared and disappeared like well-trained ghosts. Our table was in the center of the dining room, with a perfect view of the entire restaurant. Rick had spared no expense, ordering champagne that cost more per bottle than I used to make in a day. "To Jake Morrison," Rick announced, raising his glass. "The man who reminded us all why we got into this business in the first place." The table erupted in applause. My colleagues, their spouses, even some of the clients who'd made the trip. Lisa clapped politely, but I noticed she barely touched her champagne. Dinner conversation flowed around topics I usually enjoyed: business strategies, market trends, industry gossip. But I found myself distracted, watching Lisa pick at her salmon and check her phone every few minutes. "Excuse me," she said during the main course. "I need to use the restroom." She was gone for 20 minutes. When she returned, her cheeks were flushed, and she seemed agitated. "Everything okay?" I whispered. "Fine. Just felt a little dizzy." But she wasn't fine. She barely spoke for the rest of the evening, responding to questions with one-word answers and declining dessert. When Rick's wife tried to engage her in conversation about vacation plans, Lisa just smiled and said we hadn't discussed any trips. The drive home was silent except for the radio. Lisa stared out the passenger window, watching the city lights blur past. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but I was afraid of the answer. "That was a nice evening," I said as we pulled into our driveway. "Mm-hmm." Rick's wife mentioned they're planning a couple's trip to Napa next spring. Might be fun. Maybe. Inside, Lisa went straight upstairs. I poured myself a scotch and sat in my home office, looking at the framed photo on my desk. It was from our wedding day, 10 years ago. Lisa looked radiant in her white dress, laughing at something I'd whispered in her ear. I looked like the luckiest man alive. I tried to remember what I'd said to make her laugh like that. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your wife left her earring in my car. Should I drop it off tomorrow? David. Rachel's husband. Why would Lisa be in David's car?" I read the message 3 times, each reading making less sense than the last. Lisa was upstairs, presumably asleep. I could hear water running in the master bathroom. Normal sounds of a normal evening in a normal marriage, except nothing felt normal anymore. I climbed the stairs quietly, my heart pounding for reasons I didn't want to examine. The bedroom door was closed, but I could see light underneath. I knocked softly. "Lisa, you okay in there?" "Just getting ready for bed. I'll be out in a minute." Her voice sounded strange, hurried, like she was trying to hide something. I went back downstairs and poured another scotch, this one larger than the first. David's text glowed on my phone screen like an accusation. There had to be an innocent explanation. Maybe Lisa and Rachel had gone shopping and David had given them a ride. Maybe they'd all gone to lunch and Lisa had forgotten her earring. Maybe my wife wasn't having an affair with my sister-in-law's husband. But even as I tried to convince myself, I knew. The way you know when you're getting sick before the symptoms appear. The way you know when someone's lying before you catch them in the lie. I knew. And the knowing was like swallowing broken glass. The scotch burned, but not as much as the truth. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Lisa, listening to her breathe, studying the curve of her shoulder in the moonlight that filtered through our bedroom curtains. She looked peaceful, innocent, like the woman I'd married, not the stranger she'd become. At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went downstairs to my office. David's text was still there, glowing accusingly in the darkness. I started typing a response 6 times, then deleted each one. "What do you say to a man who might be sleeping with your wife? Thanks for finding her earring. How long has this been going on? Go to hell?" Instead, I did what any self-respecting man in the digital age does when his world starts crumbling. I started investigating. Lisa's laptop was in the kitchen, plugged into its charger. She'd never been paranoid about passwords. We'd always had an open device policy in our marriage. I'd never had a reason to snoop before. Her email revealed nothing obvious. Work correspondence, shopping confirmations, newsletters from various retailers. But her browser history told a different story. Searches for divorce attorneys. Articles about starting over after 40. A bookmarked page for luxury apartments downtown. My hands shook as I scrolled through weeks of research she'd been doing behind my back. She hadn't just been thinking about leaving, she'd been planning it. The worst part was a saved email draft, never sent, addressed to her sister Rachel. "You were right about Jake. I've wasted too many years waiting for him to become someone he's not. David says I deserve better, and maybe he's right. I know this is complicated because of family, but I can't keep pretending to be happy. We need to talk. David says I deserve better." I read that line 10 times, each reading like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just an affair, it was a conspiracy. Rachel and David working together to destroy my marriage. Rachel feeding Lisa poison about my inadequacies while David offered himself as the alternative. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of the life I'd thought we were building together. The coffee maker Lisa had insisted on buying last Christmas. The dining table where we'd hosted dinner parties for friends who were probably gossiping about us behind our backs. The refrigerator covered with photos from happier times. When Lisa came downstairs at 7 a.m., I was still sitting there. "You're up early," she said, avoiding eye contact as she started the coffee maker. "Couldn't sleep." "Everything okay?" I almost laughed. "Everything okay?" My wife was planning to leave me for my brother-in-law. My sister-in-law was orchestrating the whole thing, and I was sitting in my kitchen at dawn reading the evidence of my own betrayal. "David texted last night," I said. "Something about your earring." Lisa's hand froze on the coffee pot. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw panic in her eyes. Then she recovered, smooth as silk. "Oh, right. Rachel and I went shopping yesterday, and David picked us up when Rachel's car wouldn't start. I must have dropped it in his back seat." The lie came so easily, so naturally, that I wondered how many others I'd been swallowing without question. "That's nice of him, going out of his way like that. He's a good brother-in-law." She poured her coffee, still not meeting my eyes. "I should probably call him and arrange to get it back." "No need. I can text him back and tell him to drop it off." "No!" The word came out sharper than she'd intended. "I mean, that's not necessary. I'll handle it." She grabbed her coffee and purse and headed for the garage. "I'm going to be late tonight." Work dinner. After she left, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I had research to do. David Peterson owned 3 car dealerships and lived in a McMansion in Westbrook Heights, about 20 minutes from our neighborhood. I'd been to their house exactly twice, once for Rachel's birthday party, once for a Christmas gathering. Both times I'd felt like a tourist visiting a museum of wealth I'd never understand. I drove past the house around noon, feeling like a stalker, but unable to stop myself. David's Mercedes was in the driveway, along with a car I didn't recognize. As I watched from across the street, the front door opened and Lisa walked out. She was wearing the blue dress I'd complimented that morning, the one she'd said was for a work meeting. She looked around nervously, then hurried to her car. David appeared in the doorway, watching her leave with the satisfied expression of a man who'd just gotten everything he wanted. I followed her from a distance, my heart hammering against my ribs. She didn't go to work. Instead, she drove to the Marriott downtown and disappeared into the lobby. I sat in the parking lot for an hour, watching the entrance before she emerged looking flushed and guilty. That evening, she came home with takeout Chinese food and a story about her work dinner being canceled. "How was your day?" she asked, serving lo mein onto our plates like nothing had changed. "Productive," I said. "Closed another deal. Smaller than the big one, but still significant." "That's great, honey." Honey. She hadn't called me honey in months, and now it sounded like a word in a foreign language she was trying to pronounce correctly. Over the next week, I became a part-time private investigator in my own life. I tracked Lisa's movements, monitored her phone usage, even hired a guy I found online to run a background check on David. What I discovered was a pattern of deception that went back months. The work dinners were hotel meetings. The girls' nights were evenings at David's house when Rachel was out of town. The shopping trips were afternoon rendezvous at various locations around the city. But the worst discovery came when I checked our joint credit card statements. Lisa had been using our card to pay for her affair, hotel rooms, expensive lingerie, dinners at romantic restaurants. She was financing her betrayal with our money. Money I'd earned working 60-hour weeks to build the future she was planning to abandon. The final piece of evidence arrived in the form of a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd come home early from work, planning to surprise Lisa with flowers and a suggestion that we go out to dinner. Instead, I found her in our bedroom, talking on her cell phone in the low, intimate voice she used to reserve for me. "I know it's complicated, but Jake's promotion changes things. If I wait much longer, he'll expect me to be grateful and stay. This might be my last chance to get out before I'm trapped." I stood in the hallway, holding a bouquet of roses that suddenly felt like evidence of my own stupidity. Rachel thinks we should wait until after the holidays, but I can't keep pretending. Not when I know what it feels like to be with someone who actually wants me. Someone who actually wants me. The words cut deeper than any insult Rachel had ever thrown my way. Lisa didn't just want to leave me. She felt unwanted, unloved, trapped in a marriage with a man who'd failed to make her feel desired. And maybe she was right. Maybe I had gotten comfortable, taken her for granted, assumed that providing financially was the same as providing emotionally. Maybe I'd been so focused on building a successful career that I'd forgotten to build a successful marriage. But understanding her motivations didn't make the betrayal hurt less. If anything, it made it worse, because it meant I'd failed as a husband long before she'd failed as a wife. That night after Lisa fell asleep, I sat in my office and made a list of everything I'd lost or was about to lose. My wife, my marriage, half my assets in the inevitable divorce, my relationship with my in-laws, probably some of our mutual friends, who would be forced to choose sides. Then I made a second list, what I had left: my job, my promotion, my newfound financial security, my integrity, which was apparently worth something, even if it couldn't keep my wife faithful, and my intelligence, which had gotten me this far, and might be the only thing that could get me through what was coming next. I looked at both lists for a long time, then crumpled them up and threw them away. Lists were for men who accepted their circumstances. I wasn't that man anymore. If Lisa and David wanted to play games, I'd teach them the rules. The opportunity came sooner than I'd expected, gift-wrapped in the form of Tom and Jennifer Walsh's annual Halloween party. It was a neighborhood tradition: elaborate costumes, too much alcohol, and the kind of social mixing that turned acquaintances into friends and friends into enemies. Lisa had been excited about the party for weeks, which should have been my first clue. She'd bought an expensive costume online, a 1920s flapper dress with beading that caught the light when she moved. She looked stunning, and she knew it. "You clean up nice," I said as we walked across the street to the Walsh house. "Thank you." She smoothed her dress and checked her reflection in the car window. Rachel and David should be here soon. Of course they would be. Rachel never missed a social event where she could display her superiority, and David would want to see Lisa in her costume. I wondered if he'd helped pick it out during one of their shopping trips. The Walsh house was decorated like a haunted mansion, complete with fake spiderwebs and a fog machine on the front porch. Tom answered the door dressed as a vampire, complete with plastic fangs that made him lisp. "Jake! Lisa! You look amazing. Come in, come in. The bar's in the kitchen, and Jennifer's been asking about you all week." The party was already in full swing. Our neighbors had transformed into pirates, superheroes, movie characters, and historical figures. I'd gone simple: black suit, white shirt, thin black tie. When people asked, I told them I was a funeral director. It seemed appropriate. Lisa disappeared almost immediately, claiming she wanted to find Jennifer and compliment her decorations. I watched her work the room, laughing and chatting with people she'd been avoiding for months. She was performing, putting on a show of being the happy wife at the neighborhood party. I got a beer and positioned myself where I could observe without being obvious. Within 20 minutes, Rachel and David arrived. Rachel was dressed as Cleopatra because of course she was. David wore an expensive-looking cowboy costume that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. The three of them, Lisa, Rachel, and David, gravitated toward each other like magnets. They formed a little cluster near the fireplace, talking and laughing with the easy familiarity of people who'd been spending a lot of time together. Quite a trio, aren't they? I turned to find Jennifer Walsh beside me, dressed as Wonder Woman. She was holding a glass of wine and studying the same group I'd been watching. "What do you mean?" "Oh, come on, Jake. I've lived in this neighborhood for 12 years. I know when people are sleeping together." The directness of her statement hit me like a physical blow. If Jennifer knew, how many others had figured it out? How long had I been the clueless husband, the last to know about his own betrayal? "It's that obvious?" Jennifer's expression softened. I'm sorry. I thought you knew. The way Lisa's been acting lately, and David showing up at the coffee shop downtown with a woman who definitely wasn't Rachel. Tom told me to mind my own business, but I like you, Jake. You deserve better. How long have people been talking? A few weeks? Maybe a month? Sarah Martinez saw them at the Marriott. Mrs. Chen from the corner house spotted David's car in the Walmart parking lot where Lisa met him. Little things, but they add up. I felt sick, not just because of the affair, but because my humiliation was public. Our neighbors, people I saw every day, people whose kids played with the kids I hoped to have someday, had been watching my marriage disintegrate while I remained oblivious. "What are you going to do?" Jennifer asked. I don't know yet. But that wasn't entirely true. I'd been planning for weeks, running scenarios in my head, considering options. I just hadn't decided which plan to execute. The decision was made for me an hour later. I was in the Walsh's kitchen, refilling my beer, when I overheard a conversation from the adjacent dining room. Rachel's voice, pitched low but still audible over the party noise. "Can't keep sneaking around forever. Jake's not stupid, even if he is boring." "Lisa's handling it," David replied. "She'll tell him after the holidays." Give him a chance to adjust to the idea. And then what? You divorce your wives and ride off into the sunset? This isn't a romance novel, David. Why not? Lisa deserves to be happy. I can give her things Jake never could. Like what? A bigger house? Fancier cars? She's not some gold digger you picked up at a bar. She's my sister-in-law. Exactly. Which makes this complicated for everyone. But Lisa's made her choice. I stood frozen in the kitchen, holding my beer bottle so tightly I was surprised it didn't shatter. They were discussing my wife's future, my marriage's end, my life's destruction, like they were planning a vacation. "What about Jake?" Rachel asked. "He's going to be devastated." "Jake's a survivor. He'll find someone else eventually. Someone more compatible." David's dismissal of me, his casual assumption that I'd just accept the situation and move on, ignited something that had been building for months. Not just anger, rage, pure, focused, crystalline rage. I walked into the dining room. "Interesting conversation," I said. Rachel dropped her wine glass. The sound of breaking crystal cut through the party noise, and several people turned to look. David's face went white, then red, then white again. "Jake," Rachel stammered, "we were just planning my future?" How thoughtful. More people were noticing the commotion. The music seemed quieter, conversations more subdued. Lisa appeared in the doorway, took one look at the scene, and knew immediately what had happened. "Jake, let's go home," she said quietly. "Why?" "The party's just getting interesting. David was explaining how I'm going to handle my divorce. Apparently, I'm a survivor who'll find someone more compatible." The dining room had gone completely silent. Tom Walsh appeared, looking concerned and confused. Jennifer was behind him, her face a mixture of sympathy and morbid curiosity. "This isn't the place," Lisa said, her voice strained. "Isn't it? Our neighbors already know. Sarah Martinez saw you at the Marriott. Mrs. Chen spotted David's car in parking lots where he had no business being. The whole neighborhood's been watching you two play house while I work 60-hour weeks to pay for the hotel rooms." Lisa's face crumpled. David stepped forward, his cowboy costume making him look like a child playing dress-up. "Jake, man, let's talk about this privately." "Privately? Like you and my wife have been talking privately for months? Like you and Rachel have been talking privately about how to manage my reaction to your affair?" The word affair hung in the air like a curse. Several people gasped. Someone's phone was probably recording. By tomorrow, the whole neighborhood would know the details of my personal destruction. But I was past caring about dignity or privacy or social niceties. "Tell me, David, what can you give Lisa that I can't? Besides herpes and a guilty conscience?" "Jake!" Lisa stepped between us. tears streaming down her face. "Stop it, please." "Stop what? Defending my marriage? Calling out the man who's been screwing my wife while I was working to build a future she was planning to abandon?" David's face flushed with anger. "You want to know what I can give her? Attention, appreciation, a man who doesn't take her for granted. And a Mercedes. Don't forget the Mercedes. That's important to Lisa. Almost as important as betraying her husband with his sister-in-law's blessing." Rachel, who'd been silent since her wine glass shattered, finally found her voice. "This is exactly why Lisa needs to get away from you. You're cruel and small and what? Boring? Inadequate? Not good enough for your precious sister-in-law? I've heard it all, Rachel. Every condescending comment, every comparison to your wonderful husband, every suggestion that Lisa deserves better. Well, congratulations. You finally convinced her." The room was packed now. Half the party had crowded into the dining room to watch the show. I recognized faces from up and down Mercury Lane, people I'd borrowed tools from, shared beers with, helped during power outages and snowstorms. "You want to know what's really funny?" I continued, my voice getting louder. "I just got promoted to senior vice president, $250,000 a year plus bonuses. Lisa's been planning to leave me right as I finally became everything she claimed she wanted." Lisa sobbed harder. David looked like he wanted to hit me or disappear, possibly both. But that's not enough, is it? Because it's not about money. It's about respect. And you can't respect a man who's too stupid to know his wife is cheating on him, too pathetic to see the signs, too trusting to check hotel receipts and credit card statements. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd been collecting for weeks. Screenshots of our credit card bills, showing charges at hotels, restaurants, lingerie stores. Photos I'd taken of Lisa leaving David's house, of David's car in various parking lots where he'd met my wife. Should I post these on the neighborhood Facebook page? Let everyone see the evidence of your great romance? "Jake, don't," Tom Walsh said quietly. "This has gone far enough." He was right, but I was beyond rational thought. Months of humiliation, betrayal, and public embarrassment had reached a boiling point, and I was going to make sure everyone understood exactly what had been done to me. "You're right, Tom. It has gone far enough. My wife's been sleeping with my brother-in-law for months, spending our money on hotels and lingerie, planning to divorce me while I worked overtime to afford the life she claimed she wanted. And I'm the one who should stop?" Lisa ran from the room. Rachel followed her, shooting me a look of pure hatred. David stood his ground, trying to salvage some dignity from the wreckage. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "For who? You? Lisa? Rachel? What about me, David? What about making this easy for the guy whose life you've been destroying? Your marriage was already over. Lisa was miserable. I just gave her an alternative. My marriage was over because you and Rachel spent months poisoning it, filling Lisa's head with dissatisfaction, offering her a way out, making her believe she deserved better than what we had." The crowd was getting uncomfortable now. This had moved beyond entertainment into genuine human tragedy, and people were starting to remember that they had to live next to us after tonight. But I wasn't finished. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, addressing David, but speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're going to go home to your wife and explain why the neighborhood is buzzing about your affair. Lisa's going to file for divorce, and you're going to discover that being the other man is a lot easier than being the next husband. And I'm going to rebuild my life without any of you in it." I turned to address the room full of neighbors. "Sorry for ruining the party, folks. But I thought you should know who you're really living next to." I walked out of the Walsh house and across the street to my own front door. Behind me, I could hear voices rising in excited conversation. By morning, the story would be all over the neighborhood. By next week, it would probably reach our workplaces. I'd just committed social suicide, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Lisa didn't come home that night. I sat in our living room until dawn, still wearing my funeral director costume, watching the sunrise paint our neighborhood in shades of gold and pink. It was beautiful and peaceful, and it felt like the end of everything I'd known. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Word was spreading beyond our immediate neighbors. I turned it off and made coffee, trying to decide what came next. The answer arrived at 8 a.m. in the form of a knock on my front door. Through the peephole, I could see Tom Walsh, still looking tired from his party, but dressed in jeans and a serious expression. "Hey, Jake, can we talk?" I let him in and poured him coffee without asking if he wanted any. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Lisa and I had shared breakfast 1,000 times, and stared at each other for a moment. "Hell of a party," Tom said finally. "Sorry about that. I know you and Jennifer put a lot of work into it. Forget the party. Are you okay?" The simple question, asked with genuine concern, almost broke me. I'd been so focused on anger and betrayal that I hadn't stopped to consider whether I was okay. I wasn't, obviously, but admitting it felt like surrender. "I've been better. Jennifer feels terrible. She says she should have told you sooner, but she didn't want to get involved in something that wasn't her business. She was trying to be kind." "I appreciate that." Tom nodded and sipped his coffee. "What are you going to do now?" "Honestly, I have no idea. Get divorced, I guess. Try to figure out how to live alone in a house that was supposed to be for 2 people. You know you don't have to stay here, right? I mean, if it's too hard being surrounded by memories and neighbors who know your business." He was right, but the thought of leaving felt like another defeat, running away because I couldn't handle the aftermath of my own public meltdown. Maybe. I need to think. After Tom left, I called in sick to work again and spent the day walking around the neighborhood. It was Saturday, so people were out doing yard work, walking dogs, playing with kids in their driveways. A few waved and said hello like nothing had changed. Others pretended not to see me. Mrs. Chen from the corner house stopped me as I passed her garden. "Jake, dear, I'm so sorry about last night, and I'm sorry about what I saw at the parking lot." I should have said something. She was 83 years old and had lived on Mercury Lane longer than anyone else. Her opinion carried weight in the neighborhood social hierarchy. "You were being discreet, Mrs. Chen. I appreciate that. That woman doesn't deserve you. Never did. Too fancy for her own good, always complaining about this house, this neighborhood. Some people don't know when they have it good." Her words were kind, but they stung because they contained truth I'd been avoiding. Lisa had never been truly happy with our life, our house, our income level. I'd been trying to fix problems that went deeper than money or career success. That evening, Lisa finally came home. She looked exhausted, her makeup smeared, her expensive flapper costume wrinkled. She'd obviously been crying for hours. "We need to talk," she said. "Now you want to talk? After months of lying and sneaking around? I know you're angry." "Angry? Lisa, I'm destroyed. You didn't just cheat on me. You humiliated me. In front of our neighbors, our friends, people I have to see every day. You made me look like a fool." She sat down heavily on our couch, the same couch where I'd spent the last 2 nights because our bedroom felt contaminated. "I never meant for it to happen this way." "How did you mean for it to happen? You were going to wait until after the holidays, right? Give me a chance to adjust to the idea of being discarded?" Lisa flinched. "David told you that? I heard you planning my future at the party. Very thoughtful of you to consider my feelings. Jake, please. I know I handled this badly, but our marriage has been over for a long time. We both know that." I didn't know that. I thought we were going through a rough patch. I thought my promotion would help, that having financial security would take the pressure off and we could work on us. It's not about money. Then what is it about? What does David give you that I can't? Lisa was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. He makes me feel alive. When I'm with him, I remember who I used to be before I became half of a couple that wasn't working. And who were you? Someone who laughed more. Someone who felt beautiful and wanted and, I don't know, special. The honesty in her answer hurt more than any lie could have. She wasn't leaving me for money or status or even better intimacy. She was leaving me because I'd failed to make her feel like the woman she wanted to be. I tried, Lisa. Maybe I didn't try hard enough or in the right ways, but I tried. I know you did. And I tried too, for a long time. But trying isn't enough when the fundamental connection is gone. When did it disappear? When did we stop being us? She thought about it, really considered the question. I think it was gradual. Work stress, money worries, the routine of daily life. We became roommates instead of lovers. Partners instead of passion. And David brought back the passion. Yes. The simple honesty of that admission was like a knife to the heart. No elaborate justifications or blame shifting. Just the truth. Another man had given her something I couldn't. So, what now? I'm filing for divorce. I've already talked to a lawyer. Of course she had. While I was processing the devastation of discovery, she'd been taking practical steps toward our legal separation. And David? He's leaving Rachel. We're going to try to build something together. In this neighborhood? With everyone knowing how it started? Lisa shook her head. We're moving. David found a house across town, a fresh start, with my money, since half of everything we owned would become hers in the divorce. She'd use our shared assets to build a new life with the man who'd helped destroy our old one. I'll need you to move out while we sort through the legal stuff, she continued. My lawyer says it's better if we're not living together during the proceedings. Your lawyer, right. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me guess, Rachel recommended someone? Jake, don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder for who? You've got your new man, your new house, your fresh start. I've got a neighborhood full of people who watched me have a public breakdown and a wife who's kicking me out of my own home. It's not just your home. I've lived here too, contributed too. With what? Your part-time event planning job that barely covers groceries? I paid the mortgage, the utilities, the insurance. I earned the money you're about to take half of. That's not how marriage works, and you know it. She was right, legally speaking. But emotionally, morally, it felt like theft. She was profiting from the destruction of our marriage, using the resources I'd provided to start over with another man. Fine. I'll pack some things and stay at a hotel until I can find an apartment. Jake, I'm sorry. I really am. I never wanted to hurt you this badly. But you did it anyway. For months. Every time you met him. Every time you lied about where you were. Every time you came home and pretended to be my wife. You chose to hurt me. Lisa started crying again, but I was beyond being moved by her tears. She'd made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences. The guilt she felt now was too little, too late. I packed a suitcase with enough clothes for a week and grabbed my laptop and important documents. The house felt different already, like it belonged to someone else, which I supposed it did. I'll have my lawyer contact yours, I said from the doorway. Jake, wait. Lisa stood up, mascara streaking her cheeks. I hope someday you can forgive me. And I hope you find someone who can love you the way you deserve. I thought I already had. I drove to the Marriott downtown, the same hotel where she'd been meeting David. It seemed appropriate somehow, like completing a circle. The desk clerk was professional and discreet, probably accustomed to men checking in alone with haunted expressions and single suitcases. My room was on the 7th floor, with a view of the city I'd worked so hard to succeed in. The lights twinkled like stars, beautiful and distant and cold. I opened the minibar and poured myself a whiskey that cost $20 for 2 ounces. It tasted like the most expensive failure of my life. But as I sat there, looking out at the city lights and processing the end of my marriage, I realized something important. I was free. For the first time in months, I didn't have to pretend everything was fine. I didn't have to ignore signs of betrayal or make excuses for my wife's behavior. I didn't have to carry the weight of a relationship that had been dead longer than I'd wanted to admit. The freedom was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I pulled out my phone and turned it back on. Dozens of missed calls and texts from numbers I didn't recognize, plus a few from people I actually knew. My assistant Tasha had called 3 times. My boss Rick had left a voicemail. Even my mother in Florida had somehow heard the news. But there was one text that made me smile for the first time in days. It was from Jennifer Walsh. "Tom and I want you to know that you'll always be welcome in this neighborhood, no matter what happens. You're a good man who deserved better. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I typed back, "Thank you. That means more than you know." Then I opened my laptop and started researching divorce attorneys. If Lisa wanted to play hardball, I'd give her a game she wouldn't forget. After all, I'd just learned that sometimes the only way to win is to stop playing by rules that were designed for you to lose. The old Jake Morrison, the trusting husband, the accommodating neighbor, the man who tried to fix problems by working harder and earning more, was gone. The man who remained was someone else entirely. Someone who'd been forged in betrayal and tempered by public humiliation. Someone who understood that nice guys don't finish last because they're not good enough. They finish last because they're playing a different game than everyone else. But I was a fast learner, and I had excellent teachers. Lisa had taught me about deception. David had taught me about taking what you want. Rachel had taught me about using weakness against people. Now it was time for me to teach them a few lessons of my own.